My family decided my vacation wasn't mine anymore. They turned it into my sister's luxury getaway with her spoiled kids, her husband, and their endless demands. They changed the destination, the dates, and even the hotel without asking me not once. I paid for everything. Yet somehow I became the babysitter again. That was the breaking point. They didn't know I had a secret plan when I'd been building quietly for years. The day we were supposed to fly together, I walked to a different gate, boarded a different flight, and vanished. And when they arrived at the resort expecting me to take care of everything, what they didn't expect was the bill waiting under their name. But before I share my story with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments so I know you're listening, or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story can reach. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. My name is Ethan Miller, and this is how I finally walked away from a lifetime of being the family's safety net. If you've ever felt like the one holding everyone together while no one holds you, then stay, listen, and maybe subscribe. Not for me, but for every quiet soul who ever wanted to say enough. The smell of lemon oil and roasted chicken always meant one thing in my parents' house. Ashley Bennett was home. I pulled into the driveway of our Spanish-style house in Mesa, Arizona, the one I'd grown up in, now gleaming with fresh stucco and endless reminders of who really mattered here. The sun dipped behind the palms, painting the sky the same shade of gold that seemed to follow my sister everywhere. Even from the porch, I could see at the wall of her triumphs, college diplomas, newspaper clippings, photos of her smiling beside trophies. Not one picture of me past high school. Just the old soccer photo Mom kept out of pity. I used to think it was an oversight. Now, at 32, I knew better. Inside, laughter floated from the kitchen. Mom's voice rang out. "Ethan, you made it. Sit, sit. We were just talking about Ashley Bennett's new vlog deal." My father, Robert Miller, nodded proudly like a man who'd personally negotiated it, while my brother-in-law, Tyler Bennett, scrolled through his phone, pretending to listen. My sister, perfect as always in her cream linen dress, was describing how her next video would showcase authentic family time. The irony wasn't lost on me. I tried to wait for a pause to mention my promotion at the marketing firm director position, something I'd worked years for. But every time I opened my mouth, someone spoke louder. When I finally managed, "Actually, I've got some good news too," Mom cut me off with a cheerful, "Oh, speaking of news, did you know Ashley Bennett hit 60,000 subscribers? We should celebrate." And celebrate we did with a cake that said "Happy Anniversary, Ashley and Tyler" in pink frosting. My birthday had been last week, but apparently we'd skipped that part. The last time they'd forgotten I was 10. Mom tried to pass off Ashley's leftover graduation cake as mine. Same handwriting, same cold smile. I stared at the cake, forced a smile, and said nothing. That's how peace worked in this family. You swallowed the bitterness whole and called it love. When dinner ended, I stood to clear the plates. Actually, I said, "I'm planning to take a week off. Just me somewhere quiet. Maybe Savannah, Georgia. I've been working nonstop, and I think I need—" "Oh, that's perfect." Mom's face lit up. "We should all go together. The twins love the beach." Ashley clapped her hands. "Yes, we can rent a family suite. Maybe do a vlog like Beach Days with the Millers. Fans would love to see Uncle Ethan in action." Uncle Ethan in action. Tyler chuckled, tapping on his phone, already picturing me chasing sand-covered twins while Ashley posed for content. Dad cleared his throat. "Huntington Beach is closer. Savannah's a long haul with kids." "Exactly." Mom said, "I already looked at a resort in Orange County. Family-friendly kid club, everything." They were nodding, planning, deciding all without me. I stood there smiling as if I agreed, though something cold settled under my ribs. That vacation had been mine, something I'd earned. But in this family, what was mine never stayed mine for long. As the conversation drifted to who'd bring snacks and who'd watch the boys, I caught sight of the hallway map California coast, a red pin stuck on Balboa Island. I'd pinned it years ago, dreaming of peace and blue water. That pin caught the light, now glinting like a promise I'd made to myself and forgotten. After dinner, I stepped outside. The desert air was warm and still. Through the kitchen window, I saw my mother laughing Ashley twirling her wine glass. Dad reaching for another slice of cake that had her name written across it. I stood by my car, hand on the door, and wondered not for the first time what would happen if I stopped saying yes. I started the engine, glanced at the rear view mirror, and watched that glowing house shrink behind me. For the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like space for something I hadn't allowed myself in years, the thought of leaving. If I didn't keep saying yes, maybe the whole house wouldn't collapse. Maybe it would just stop using me as its foundation. My apartment in Oakland, California was small, clean, and quiet. 3 things my parents' house would never be. The glow of my laptop was the only light that night as I sat surrounded by printouts and sticky notes. My life reduced to evidence. The twin boys had spent the weekend here, turning my couch into a fort and my nerves into dust. When I told Ashley I couldn't take them next weekend, she texted, "You're abandoning them. You know that, right?" Then Mom called saying, "Family comes first, Ethan. Ashley needs rest." Rest. That word hit differently when it was never meant for me. I opened my email inbox. My manager had just written about the new regional project lead position. A major step forward, more hours, more travel, and the kind of recognition I'd worked for since college. I'd replied, "Yes, interested." 5 hours later, HR told me the offer had been delayed due to family concerns. Turns out Mom had called my office telling them I was needed at home with the children. I stared at the screen, pulse steady and slow. The same kind of quiet you get before something finally breaks. I started printing every weekend, every late night babysitting text, every emergency that pulled me from my own life. 14 months of it, color-coded, dated, logged. I labeled it boundaries. Next, I took photos of the text threads. "Can you watch them for an hour? You're not busy, right? You don't know tired until you've had kids." Ethan, I saved everything. Then I opened a blank page and wrote out 3 rules. 1, I am not on call. 2, I am not free childcare. 3, I am not selfish for wanting my own life. I read them aloud. They sounded foreign, but solid. When I was 10, my parents reused Ashley's cake. At 16, they gave me her old violin when I asked for guitar lessons. At 21, they told me they couldn't help with tuition because they were still paying for her wedding. And at 32, I realized the pattern hadn't changed. It had just evolved. I checked my phone again. 56 unread messages from the family chat. I muted it, then searched Balboa Island flights. The photos looked exactly like the peace I'd been craving. Quiet beaches, faded bungalows, a world too small for other people's noise. I canceled my refundable Savannah, Georgia booking and quietly made another reservation. Different airline, different name, different credit card. An email pinged a moment later from my mother. "Honey, don't worry about Savannah. We found a much better place in Orange County. We already booked it. It's under Ashley's name, non-refundable, so don't make changes. You'll thank me later." I opened the attachment. Huntington Beach Resort. 5-star, 3 rooms. Her suite, the kids' room, and mine listed under family support. The words blurred a little. They'd done it again. Taken my plans, rewritten them in their language, and left me the invoice. For a long time, I just sat there reading that single phrase, non-refundable. It felt poetic, almost biblical. My whole life had been one long, non-refundable commitment to their comfort, their chaos, their convenience. Then another email from Ashley Bennett. "Hey, heads up. We'll be filming some family content at the resort. You're part of it, obviously. Thinking of doing a day in the life with Uncle Ethan. Bring something beachy. Love you." My throat burned. Love you. The 2 words she used when she needed something. I closed my laptop. The city outside was humming alive and different. Somewhere beyond the fog, a quiet island waited, red pin still glinting on that old map in Mesa. I wasn't running away from my family. I was walking toward the version of myself they'd never allowed to exist. I folded the printed schedule, slid it into a folder, and whispered the words that had become my compass. They taught me to give. Now I'll teach them what happens when I stop. The next morning, I requested my vacation days officially. No explanation given. HR approved within an hour. Before bed, I checked that one last email, the resort confirmation under Ashley's name with the bold line, non-refundable. I stared at it and smiled. If they've decided to pay for everything, I murmured, then maybe it's time they learn the real cost. The week before the trip felt like standing on a fault line. Everything looked calm, but one wrong word could make it all crack. My family's group chat had turned into a logistics committee, meal schedules, activity plans, checklists for the twins. Ashley sent me a spreadsheet labeled beach rotation that assigned me to morning shifts with the kids while she and Tyler had couple time. There was even a note in her cheerful handwriting, "Ethan drives the SUV since filming equipment takes up my trunk." My jaw tightened, but I typed back a single thumbs-up emoji. Silence was easier than the explosion that would follow honesty. At night, my apartment felt like a war room. I sat at my kitchen table laptop, opened the glow of the screen, painting my face in cold blue. One by one, I began cutting the cords they didn't even know they held around me. First, I turned off Find My Location sharing, watching the circle with my name disappear from the family map. Then I went through every app, Apple ID, Gmail, Life 360, and revoked their permissions. I scanned every important document I owned, stored the files in a private folder, and emailed a copy to my work account. If they decided to storm my life again, I wanted my foundation secure. The next step was Balboa Island. I opened a fresh browser incognito mode using a backup email I'd created weeks earlier. I booked a small room on Balboa Island facing the ocean and quietly added morning yoga and afternoon pottery classes. Not because I cared about either. I just needed structure, something that belonged only to me. When the confirmation email arrived, I read it twice, memorizing the check-in date like a secret password. The following evening, I sat on the couch scrolling through the resort emails my mother had sent. She'd attached their full Huntington Beach itinerary photos of the Sweet Menu's family activities. They'd taken over every inch of the plan. I noticed the words non-refundable stamped in bold at the bottom under Susan Miller's credit card statement. The satisfaction that rippled through me was quiet but deep. They had written me out of the decision, yet written me into the bill. A knock at my door broke the stillness. My building's doorman held a small envelope. "This was dropped off earlier from your family," he said. Inside was my old apartment key, the spare my mother insisted on keeping in case of emergencies. Except the metal was scratched and worn in ways that told a story it had been used. Suddenly, every unannounced drop-off every time the twins appeared at my doorstep. Every we were in the neighborhood clicked into place. They'd never needed to ask, they already had access. The next morning, I took the key to a locksmith. "Change it completely," I said. "Every bolt, every copy." The man didn't ask questions. When he handed me the new set, the small metallic sound it made felt like freedom, a sound no one else could mimic. I sealed the old key in an envelope, wrote "retired" across the front, and tucked it in the back of a drawer. Later that day, an unknown number flashed across my phone. I almost ignored it until the voice on the line said, "Hi, this is HR. Your mother called about a family medical emergency. She wanted to postpone your vacation request." My stomach turned, and you believed her. The HR rep hesitated. "We verified with your manager first. He said you already told us you'd be offline, so we let her know she doesn't have authority over your schedule." When the call ended, I sat motionless for a long time. They had crossed into my professional life now. And for once, I wasn't angry. I was numb. That kind of intrusion wasn't family concern. It was ownership. I opened my notebook, the one labeled to myself, and wrote 3 short lines. "I am not on call. I am not a lifeline. I am not afraid to disappear. Packing took less than an hour. One small suitcase, one backpack. No family t-shirts, no souvenirs for the kids, no evidence of the life I was leaving behind. Just clothes, headphones, and the folder titled Boundaries. Before bed, I emailed my supervisor. If anyone contacts you claiming to be a relative, please forward to HR. I'll be unreachable during my break. He replied with a single word. Understood. At dawn, I stood in my living room, suitcase ready. The schedule for Balboa Island was taped inside my closet door, a private map of the days ahead. Yoga, pottery, ocean silence. I looked around the apartment one last time, took a slow breath, and locked the door behind me. At the airport, hours later, the departure board glowed in front of me. Gate A15, Huntington Beach. Gate D7, Newport Beach. Balboa Island, ferry connection. I tightened my grip on the phone, scrolled to settings, and slid every family notification switch to off. The world went quiet in an instant. My flight began boarding, and with one small motion, I walked toward the life they never planned for me. Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport buzzed like a hive that morning. Loudspeakers calling names, families rushing with strollers, the smell of coffee and jet fuel filling the air. I arrived early on purpose so I could watch them before they saw me. My family clustered near Gate A15, Ashley in her wide-brim hat. Tyler juggling the luggage, my mother directing everyone like a general. The twins ran in circles around the benches, their laughter echoing across the glass terminal walls. For a moment, guilt hit hard, sharp as a blade. They were just kids. But then I remembered the spreadsheet, the phone calls, the invisible leash I'd worn for years. I kept my distance behind a column half hidden by the reflection on the glass. From where I stood, I could hear fragments of their voices. Mom reminding the clerk that my son should be checking in any minute. Ashley complaining about the lighting for her vlog intro. They looked like a picture-perfect family. I was just the shadow that never made the frame. My phone buzzed once, then again, faster now. Where are you, Gate A15, boarding now? Don't do this. I turned the screen face down, heart steady but heavy. Across the terminal, Ashley lifted her phone, scanning the crowd. I saw the flicker of irritation in her posture when she didn't find me. My father, always the quiet diplomat, stood by the window checking his watch. For the first time, I didn't feel small under his silence. I felt invisible and powerful. I moved toward Gate D7, keeping my head low. Different airline, different destination, same day. When the boarding line opened, I joined it without looking back. As I handed the agent my ticket, my phone buzzed again. One last message lighting up the screen before I switched it off completely. The twins are crying. Are you happy? Now I slipped the phone into my pocket and stepped onto the plane. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and freedom. As we took off, I looked out the window. The desert spread below, golden and endless. Somewhere to the west, they were landing in Orange County, checking into a suite I'd never see. I imagined my mother pacing the lobby, Ashley snapping at the staff, my father making calls, all of them waiting for me to appear and fix the chaos. But this time, the chaos was theirs alone. Halfway through the flight, an email notification slid across my laptop screen, the resort receipt. Huntington Beach family package payment processed under card ending in 9143 Susan Miller. I smiled faintly. The irony was almost too perfect. They'd built a trip around my labor, and now they'd pay for it without me. The pilot announced our descent into John Wayne Airport, SNA. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, calmer, sharper. For years, I'd been the family's fallback plan. Now I was my own. The Balboa Island ferry left an hour later. The ocean wind hit hard and cold, stinging my cheeks as I stood on deck, hair whipped sideways. I watched the mainland shrink, a blur of buildings and expectation fading behind waves. My fingers itched toward my phone out of habit, wanting to check on the family group chat, but there was nothing left to check. I'd muted their noise. "I'm not running away," I whispered into the wind. "I'm stepping out of their orbit." The boat rocked gently, carving a path through blue water so clean it looked unreal. I thought of the boys, of Ashley, of my mother's controlling tenderness, and for a fleeting moment guilt clawed its way up my throat. Then I thought of the years I'd traded birthdays, missed weekends, lost sleep sacrificed, and the guilt burned off like fog under sunlight. When we docked, Balboa Island rose from the sea like a secret white cottages, bright kayaks, the faint sound of gulls. I stepped onto the pier and inhaled air that didn't belong to anyone but me. My phone vibrated once more, messages I wouldn't read, and I turned it off entirely. At the end of the dock stood an older woman in a straw hat waving at a group of travelers. She caught my eye and smiled. "First time on the island?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Well," she said, her voice soft but sure, "you picked the right place to start over." I didn't know then how right she was. The island wind rushed around me, carrying salt sunlight and something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't needed. I was free. The island greeted me with the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own pulse. My room was small and crisp white curtains breathing with the ocean breeze, a balcony barely big enough for a chair, and the sound of gulls. The first morning, I kept reaching for my phone muscle memory, searching for noise. Even powered off, it felt hot in my pocket, like it wanted to crawl back into my hand. I brewed hotel coffee that tasted like cardboard and stared at the water until the surface stopped looking like a screensaver and started looking alive. Around noon, I almost turned the phone on, stopped myself, paced the room, wiped down a counter that was already clean, then took a long shower and lay on the bed listening to my heartbeat settle. That night I slept in pieces, waking at the times the twins usually woke, half expecting small voices at my door. None came. Day 2 was worse and better. I kept checking the clock at feeding times and bedtime, hearing phantom alarms I'd never set. I walked the length of the boardwalk, twice down past the rental kayaks and back by the tiny market with the chalkboard menu. I ate a sandwich outside and watched couples argue about sunscreen. I thought about my mother telling a flight attendant I'd be arriving any minute. I thought about my sister practicing her smile into the black mirror of her phone. Back in the room, I opened my notebook and wrote down everything I could think of that belonged only to me. My work, my books, my sleep, my quiet. Seeing the list on paper made it feel less like a fantasy and more like inventory I'd finally taken. On the third morning, I rolled out a mat on the sand with a handful of strangers and did what the instructor called the simplest, hardest thing: breathe. It was the first time in months I felt my lungs fill all the way. After class, I wandered into a seaside cafe for a coffee and a pastry I didn't have to split with anyone. The woman behind the counter was older, sunbred hair tucked under a straw hat. She glanced at my face like it was a weather report. "You look like you're running from a storm," she said, kind, more than curious. I held her gaze and didn't answer. She slid me a napkin with the check. "Family is the root," she added softly. "But not every root is worth keeping." I carried that sentence into the afternoon like a stone in my pocket. I signed up for a pottery class in a little studio that smelled like wet earth and soap. My first attempt slumped and sagged under my hands, the rim wobbling like a bad decision. The instructor told me not to fix it, to see what it wanted to be. I wrote my initials on the base with a wooden stick and set it on a shelf to dry. When I washed the clay from my fingers, the sink water turned the color of something dug up. I felt lighter. On the fourth night, a group of us from the studio, 2 retirees, a grad student, a nurse on a break between shifts, ate dinner at the cafe with the string lights, the kind of spot that's too pretty to be real anywhere but an island. When they asked why I was traveling alone, I told them I was on a short work break. That wasn't a lie. I was working on dissolving an old life. We traded small stories that didn't cost anyone anything to tell. For once I wasn't the responsible one, the driver, the cleanup crew. I was a person with a fork and a chair and time. On the 5th morning, I pushed open the balcony door and wrote a single sentence in my notebook. I'm not running. I'm leaving a place where I can't breathe. The decision felt as plain and heavy as a brick, something you could build with. I turned my phone on. It vibrated like it was angry. 320 messages lined up in gray bubbles. 158 missed calls. Voicemails stacked into a column that didn't fit on the screen. I scrolled past most of them, scanning names and subject lines like road signs I'd already decided to ignore. I opened one text from my father. I don't understand, but I'm worried. Are you safe? The missing question mark felt like him, careful, restrained, trying not to make a demand. I typed, I'm safe, and deleted it. I wasn't ready to send anything yet. A voicemail from my manager. Your mom called the office 3 times. I told her, you're on approved leave and we can't share details. Enjoy your time off. A message from my sister. You ruined the trip and made the boys sick. I stared at that line until the words went numb. Then a string from my mother. I'm calling the police. You have people worried sick. If you don't call me back in 10 minutes, I'm reporting you missing. I opened my email, found the address for the local department, and wrote a short note. I'm an adult on a planned vacation, not in danger, not missing, no welfare check needed. I attached a photo of my ferry ticket and hotel confirmation and hit send. I didn't owe my mother my whereabouts, but I owed myself clean edges. At dusk, I stood again on the sand where the day cooled quick and the horizon turned the color of a bruise fading. The yoga instructor nodded at me like we were co-conspirators and something quiet. Back in my room, I opened the family chat and wrote one single message. I'm safe. Please give me space. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I pressed send and turned the phone off for 4 more days. That night, I took the misshapen bowl from the studio and set it on the small table by the window. It wasn't beautiful, but it was mine. I touched the rough rim and saw the ways my hands had trembled and steadied. Tomorrow I would take the early ferry. Tomorrow I would re-enter a world that believed it owned me, and tell it gently, and finally, that it didn't. I looked out at the black water, freckled with light, and wrote one last line in my notebook. Tomorrow, I go back. I'm not the person they left behind. 3 mornings later, I chose a cafe in Laguna Beach with 2 bright windows and a round table near the exit. I arrived early enough to learn the room to let my hands shake and stop to rehearse silence. When my family walked in, the air changed. My mother's perfume reached the table before she did. My sister's sunglasses were too large for the cloudy day. Tyler hovered behind them like a shadow, trying to be a wall. My father looked older than I remembered, as if worry had finally found a seat on his shoulders. We did the awkward hello dance, everyone waiting for me to apologize first. I didn't. Ashley went right for the center of the table. Do you know Caleb asked me if his uncle hates him? She said, voice trembling flawless. Do you have any idea what you did to them? My mother leaned in, soft and sharp. We have done everything for you. We gave you a home. We paid for things you needed, and this is how you repay us. I slid an envelope onto the table and opened it so they could see. Inside was a printed calendar every weekend for a year, colored in notes in the margins, costs for repairs after little hands broke what little I owned. 48 weekends, I said quietly. No days off, no boundaries. You didn't invite me to help you assign me to Carrie. That's what family does, my mother said, a hand to her chest as if the anatomy protected the argument. No, I said, steady now. That's what paid child care does. Family asks. Family listens when you say you can't. Ashley's eyes filled right on cue. You're jealous. I have a family. That's the truth. I'm not jealous of your family, I said. I'm jealous of your freedom. Tyler tried to pour water into the fire. What if we make a schedule every other weekend? We'll pay something, we just want to make this work. I shook my head. This isn't a negotiation. It's not a custody arrangement for my time. It's my life. My mother's face hardened. Since you want to be so independent, you should know we updated our plans. Everything goes to the grandchildren. If you want to be part of this family, behave like it. I felt something unclench in my chest. Thank you, I said. I'm free then. There's nothing left to leverage. Ashley raised her voice. We already paid for the resort you abandoned. You could at least say thank you. I didn't ask you to pay for anything, I said. You made decisions without me. People who decide for me can pay for me. That's fair. Silence pulled on the table between the sugar packets and the schedule I'd exposed. My father looked at the pages as if they were a language he'd never learned. He cleared his throat. Maybe we didn't know what we were asking of you, he said slowly. Maybe we didn't want to see it. Tyler tucked his phone away like a guilty thought. I get it, he said, eyes on me, not on his wife. I'll figure things out on my end. Outside the glass, the bay was a sheet of light. Inside, the room felt airless. I took a breath that belonged to me and stood. From now on, I said, anyone who wants to be in my life has to respect my limits. If you can't, then you don't get access. Not to my time, not to my door, not to me. My mother opened her mouth and closed it again. For once there was nothing to argue with. I slid the envelope back into my bag, picked up the worn coffee cup I'd been gripping too hard, then set it down gently so it wouldn't rattle. As I moved toward the exit, my father rose as if to follow and stopped himself. He didn't reach for me. He didn't pull me back. He only nodded, small and real. I walked past the window seat, past the chairs that had seen too many conversations like this, and out into the wind that came in off the water. It pushed against my shirt like a hand on my shoulder, not stopping me, just letting me know it was there. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't need to. Victory meant beating someone. This felt like leaving a room where the air had been thin for years, and finally stepping outside. I crossed the street toward the bay, let the salt find my lips, and thought about the woman on the island, about the sentence she'd given me to carry family is the root. But not every root is worth keeping. I had cut what was choking me. The tree still stood. I was the one who grew. 4 weeks after Laguna Beach, I woke in my new apartment in North Park. 7th floor view of the bay air, sharp with salt. The space was almost empty, only 2 suitcases and the crooked bowl from Balboa Island catching morning light. Silence filled the room, not heavy but clean. I had signed the lease with 1 condition change every lock. For the first time, only I held the keys. I joined a pottery studio and a book club down the street. My manager had given me the number of a therapist, and in our first session I admitted, I don't know how to live when I'm not carrying someone. She smiled. Then we start there. I pinned a map of Balboa Island above my desk, a red mark over Marine Avenue. My phone blinked with missed calls, but I let them fade. A letter from my mother arrived. When you come to your senses, we'll be here. I put it away unopened. Love should not sound like a contract. Saturday, I cooked pasta and invited 2 friends from pottery. We ate at the counter, laughed until the walls felt warm. It had been years since laughter didn't demand clean up. After the family tried new tactics, my father texted, "Your mother is ill from worry." I checked. She was fine. I didn't reply. Ashley appeared at the lobby, blocked by the doorman. Watching from the security feed, I felt steady, not cruel. A week later, Tyler called. "We hired help," he said simply. For the first time, I believed peace could exist without apology. That night, I cleaned the Balboa Island bowl, wrote on the base, "Freedom imperfect but mine." The letters were crooked like the path that got me here. Sitting on the floor, I watched city lights flicker across the glaze and thought, freedom isn't loud. It's quiet enough to finally hear yourself breathe. 4 months later, my father texted, lunch, just us. We met at a small cafe by the water. He looked older, gentler. You look lighter, he said. He told me Mom was still angry, Ashley still blaming me, but he felt something was wrong with how they'd handled me. Then came the offer. If you help again, we'll pay you for your time. My freedom isn't for sale, I said. He nodded quiet. We thought we taught you love, he said. We taught you duty. I told him about the birthday cake that wasn't mine, the ceremonies no one came to, the years logged as unpaid labor. He didn't defend himself. He only said, I can't change the past, but I can stop repeating it. I showed him photos, my apartment, the bowl, the map of Balboa Island. This is home. He smiled. You built a good life all on your own. Outside, he hugged me, the first in a decade. I hope your mother understands one day, he said. Back home, I saw her new post, family torn apart by selfishness. I felt nothing but release. Tyler emailed, thank you for forcing us to stand on our own. Then I opened my mother's old letter. It said only, no matter what, you are still our blood. I folded it away, not angry, only done. Evening light spilled across the wall and caught a framed quote. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set yourself free. I smiled. Freedom wasn't a fight anymore, or it was a rhythm. That night, friends from Pottery came for dinner. We toasted with cheap wine and laughed about burnt bread and crooked bowls. When the last door closed, I stood on the balcony watching the bay breathe below. For 32 years, I'd lived by permission. Now I lived by choice. Balboa Island wasn't an island anymore. It was the sound of a life that finally belonged to me. When I look back now, I realize freedom didn't come from anger or revenge. It came from the quiet decision to stop apologizing for needing peace. Walking away wasn't betrayal, it was survival. For years I mistook exhaustion for love and silence for loyalty. But the truth is, real love never demands that you disappear to keep the peace. It lets you exist fully, imperfectly, and without fear. If you've ever been the one holding everyone else up, wondering when someone will finally see you, this is your sign to stop waiting. You deserve a life that's yours, one not built on guilt or obligation. If my story reaches you, let it be a reminder that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's courage. Drop a listening in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. I want to know you're out there finding your own version of freedom too. And if this story spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe. Every voice that joins keeps stories like this alive. Stories about reclaiming peace, one boundary at a